Hello, YouTube friends. Today is Monday, April 30th, the last day in April, and I am here with your Monday's Y&R review. Um, let's see. Adam and Chelsea are kissing. Sharon is at the door, knocking with a birthday card for Adam. Adam answers the door, and asks her. He's shocked that she's there. He's like, Sharon, what's going on? And she's like, she's looked in the room because he was wiping lipstick off his lips, and she see Chelsea, Victoria, Billy, Reed, and John are all together, and they're talking, about how happy they are, and Reed being a big brother and all that. Jack leaves a message for Kyle. He hasn't answered his call yet because he's at Victor's office. Abby arrives to the house, apologizing for inviting Kyle to the, without telling Jack that he was coming. He was trying to make it a surprise. She was trying to make it a surprise. She didn't know it was going to go that way. And he told her, she didn't need to apologize. Kyle asked Victor about living at the ranch, and he asked, what does Jack think? And he's like, well, I haven't told him. And Ricky is talking to someone on the telephone about selling this big story about Phyllis, and he says it's gonna make the magazine a lot of money. Avery comes in and asks him, what are you talking about with in regards to Phyllis? And he was like, he was on a private phone call and all of that, and he and her exchanged words about, her hiring him, and she regretted, and he's a loser and all of that. Nick and Phyllis talk about her being pregnant, and Nick is happy. And he asked her. He said, "Well, you never gave me the answer. Will you marry me?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I guess." Um, Billy is bonding with John. He's talking about he's the best dad, and he can rock him and sing to him and all that. Victoria and Reed are bonding. That was just a little dry moment for them. Ricky questions Avery about Phyllis, like, why are you protecting her? She didn't even want to have anything to do with you, and she regrets hiring him for Sharon's case. And they go back and forth with words like, it's your fault for this and it's your fault for that. Well, you always taking up for Phyllis. And he said, you're the real reason that Daisy got custody of Lucy, because you let her out, and so that made her feel real bad. But he left after he said that, so that made her feel real bad. So Nick and Phyllis were talking about the pregnancy and getting married, and she says they're gonna sell summer together, and Noah and all of them, so they're gonna tell everybody. And she said, well, it's one person, you have to tell, and of course, that was Sharon. So Sharon apologizes for interrupting Adam and Chelsea, and Adam said she just surprised. He's like, no need to apologize. She just surprised me. And she said, well, I know nobody was probably going to celebrate it with you, so I just want to show you that I didn't forget. And he said, well, Chelsea was helping me celebrate. And she said, well, I can see that now. And she gave him the card, and then she left. So Chelsea tries to leave. She thinks that him and Sharon still have something going on. And he's like, you don't have to leave because of Sharon. I mean, it's nothing going on between us. And she said, well, I just don't feel like partying after giving your baby up. You don't feel like balloons and birthday parties and birthday cakes and all of that. And he said, but you don't have to leave. And I understand, but she left anyway. Kyle says he just does not feel, excuse me, y'all. He does not feel like moving in with his father because all the things that have changed is just not a good for him right now. And Victor said, he said, well, Victor has always, since he and his mom had moved back, had always made the effort to make them feel wanted and, appreciated and welcome. So Victor said, I will always make an effort for it. So he tells Kyle to discuss it with his dad, and he says yes to him moving in. Kyle thanks him, and then he leaves. Abby and Jack are talking about the baby, and then Abby gets a text message from Kyle. She really doesn't want to leave Jack, but he was like, go be with your friends, Kyle will be home, later, and me and him are talking. She was like, no, he's not going to be home. And he was like, what do you mean by that? And then she tell him that Kyle is moving in with her dad. And Jack just looks stunned. So Victoria is talking to Reed about being a good big brother. And like he is. I think the other baby's name is Jacob or something like that. I don't know what the other baby's name is. JT and Mackenzie's little boy. And he was like, well, I'm just nervous about being a big brother. And she was like, you're going to be the best big brother. And or I just have worry if you're going to have time for me. And he was like, yeah, I'm always going to have time for you. So that was a cute little moment. So as they're hugging, Billy comes in and asks, is everything okay? And she say everything's wonderful. So Avery comes over to Phyllis's and she's apologizing and she says she's wrong. She was wrong for bringing Ricky in town. She was wrong for getting Daisy out. She doesn't want to be anything like their dad. She admits she was wrong, that she came and was blaming Phyllis for everything that went on in their life. And she understands if she hates her. Phyllis goes that I don't hate you. And she goes, things are going to change for all of us. And Avery notices a change. She's like, I'm noticing a change. And she said, things are going to change for all of us. So Nick meets Sharon at the coffee house. And she asks, is everything okay? Is something wrong with, what is the baby's name? Something wrong with their baby, the little girl. And he was like, no, nothing's wrong. And he tells her that he asked Phyllis to marry him. And she said yes. So Abby meets up with Kyle at Glowworm, and they talk about Jack being with Nikki, and she was like, I'm sorry. I thought, I'm sorry that you had to learn about it this way, but do you think moving in with Victor, she said, do you think it's right that you're moving in with my dad to get back at your dad? And Jack shows up at Victor's office and questions him about what he's doing with Kyle, and Victor asks, what do you mean what I'm doing? So Chelsea is in her room questioning herself in regards to Adam's, like, you're never going to be with Adam. Adam is in his room reading Sharon's birthday card, and it's like, I hope you find the perfect one for you. And he's looking through his phone, and he's hesitating to call Sharon. So Sharon questions Nick about Phyllis, why are you marrying her? Is this because, last time you met her, she was pregnant, you were married, this because she was pregnant with Summer. Why are you doing this? And she asked him, is he marrying her because she lost Lucy? And he said he is marrying her because that's what is right. And he tells her he's not asking her for her advice or her opinion. He's just telling her because he thinks she should know. And she said, well, congratulations to you both. And he tells her not to tell anyone until he tells Noah. He never tells her that Phyllis is pregnant. He just says that he asked her to marry her. So he leaves, and she looks all sad and gets teary-eyed. So Phyllis says she had a lot on her mind. She doesn't want to talk about it to Avery. Avery reminds Phyllis about the time Phyllis wanted to read Avery's diary, and she was saying no, and how, she ended up getting to it anyway, whatever, that little dry scene. But anyway, Avery hoped that they could move forward from it. And Phyllis apologizes and said, I'm sorry. And Avery says, me too, and then she leaves. So Abby asks Kyle, is he really going to move in with her dad, knowing how knowing how his dad feels about it, knowing what it'll do to his dad. And he said he didn't think about me, knowing what when he started dating Nikki, he didn't know he says he started dating Nikki knowing what it would do to him. So, it's like, you didn't care for my feelings, I'm not going to care for your feelings. So Victor tells Jack, you're so predictable, and I knew you were going to come. Why do you think I didn't have my security guys there to stop you when you got here? He's like, you're right, I noticed I got through, kind of easy. And he says that he's there to talk about Kyle, and Kyle only, because he had brought up Nikki. He was like, you should have told your son that you was dating Nikki. And he was like, this is not about Nikki, this is about my son. And Victor goes, any conversation about Kyle is going to include Nikki, because Nikki killed his mother. And he said, well, we know that was in self-defense and all of that. And he said, Kyle came to me, I didn't go to him. He's a grown man, he can come live with me at the ranch if he wants to. And he said, y'all, they both have something in common. They see Jack for who he really is. So Adam receives his cake from room service. Sharon is sitting at the coffee house. Avery walks in and said, I never imagined seeing you, running a fashion, I mean a cosmetics, department or whatever. And she said, yeah, I thank you for, getting me out of prison or whatever. And she said, you got all this work going on, and and it's good for you. And she said, yeah, but all the work doesn't mean, you can still be empty inside. And Avery was like, yeah, I know what you mean about that. So Nick tells Phyllis, he gets back, he tells Phyllis he's told her about the wedding, and he's like, well, what does she have to say about that? And he said, she said she was happy about us. I mean, she was happy for us, and she congratulated us. And she was like, is that all she had to say? And he said, yeah. Then did you tell her that I'm pregnant? He said, no, I'm not going to tell anybody that. We're going to wait and just let only the kids know. We'll tell everybody else later. So Billy and Victoria talk, and they, was like, what we gonna do? We don't have nothing else to do. The baby's sleep, Reed sleep. So what we gonna do? So as they started kissing, the baby started crying. So Billy said, I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna take care of the baby and tell him how not to, start crying at the wrong time. So as he going upstairs, the doorbell ring, and it's Abby bringing Victoria her phone. She left it at Glowworm. So Kyle and Jack are talking. Kyle's getting ready to leave. Jack didn't want to fight. He's like, I don't want to fight either. And they get to talking about him moving in with Victor, and they get to arguing about Nikki. And Jack is trying to explain himself to Kyle, and he's telling Kyle that he loves him. And he said hooking up with Nikki is a way of showing it. And he said moving in with Victor is gonna make things worse. And Kyle says only for you, Dad. So they go back and forth. Um, Abby tells um, Abby tells Billy and Victoria that Kyle is moving in with Victor, and they go like, "Oh my God, no!" So Jack is trying to reason with Kyle again, like, "Please don't do it. I can fix things. Give me another chance. I'm trying. I love you." And Kyle said, "You used up all your chances," and then he leaves, and Jack is just like torn at the door, with his head down. So Adam goes to see Chelsea with a cake, and she questions him about Sharon. Excuse me. And she questions him about Sharon. And he goes, I told you she just came to give me a card. It was just a card. So he was like, just eat some of the cake with me. Just share the cake with me. And she's like, do you have forks or whatever? And he goes in. So Sharon is at the coffee house still, and she drops one of her files, and there's Mr. Victor there to help her, pick up her papers. So Nick surprises Phyllis with a ring, and then they kiss or whatever. And that was that. So tomorrow, Carmine is going to ask for the bartender position. Jill questions Mike about what was Victor thinking, and he said, don't worry, he'll notice the error of his ways. Victor asks Avery to be his personal counsel, and she says, well, what about Michael Baldwin? So that's what happened today, you guys. This took up one video, so 13 minutes. I'm getting a little faster. I have to take this phone call. I'm sorry that, few things happened while I was on this recording my video, but that's what happened. That's the gist of it, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, or whatever makes you happy. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.